Sunday go to meeting Dogman stories. Welcome to Scary Stories. Over the years, I've gotten a number of submissions that I wasn't sure what to do with. There wasn't any location info sometimes. Other times the witness disappeared after sending me one email. In this case, I'm referring to a bunch of stories about werewolves and dogmen being encountered in and around spooky old churches in the woods. People tend not to want to out their family's church, and so each of the stories would get vague in spots. There was never enough info for me to locate where any of this was supposed to have happened. Still, I got 2 more submissions like this recently, and it caused me to go searching through my archives and track down the other similar stories. I've compiled them together to form this episode, and I saved the most gruesome one for our channel members and PayPal club members, and a special members-only story which should hopefully be out right now. If not, it comes out later tonight. After recently reading and adapting parts of Linda Godfrey Real Werewolves books, these submissions seemed to take on an extra meaning for me. Why? Because as Godfrey and others have pointed out, many churches are built on spots that were already considered holy or magic or powerful in some way, even before the church was built. In many cases, churches are built over spots that had been considered important since before Christianity even existed. We already know that dogman and werewolf sightings, whatever it is that people are seeing, tend to be more likely to happen in areas such as old native mound sites and cemeteries. There are a number of theories as to why this might be, including that these mounds might have been built to mark a portal area or a window area. Maybe some churches and graveyards in rural areas in the US were built on spots where strange things were known to occur already. It would seem to be the case if there is in fact any truth at all to any of these stories that I'm about to share with you. Of course, I don't really know if there is, so keep that in mind and don't view any of the following as hard evidence. In court, this would all be referred to as hearsay, but it's pretty interesting hearsay, so I'm gonna say it for you to hear. Make up your own minds about how you feel about each one of these. Story number 1. A church in Maine, and a werewolf who followed me home. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I grew up in a town in Maine, son of a military man. I myself went into the army and served a single tour of duty overseas. Things didn't go well for me over there, and I got known as having bad luck. I began to stop expecting to ever make it back home again. In fact, I was convinced I would never return stateside ever again. So when I did return to Maine, and my family came to greet me, I kind of freaked out. I wasn't sure if it was real. It felt like a dream, but it didn't feel good. Like maybe I was being lied to, or maybe lying to myself. I had stopped believing that anything good could happen to me. I kept unintentionally hurting people's feelings. They would hug me, but I couldn't remember how to hug back. Not sincerely, anyway. I knew that I was a ghost, not a man. I knew I wasn't supposed to be back in the States. Maybe it was guilt from watching my friends and how they all left this world. I did have one ex-girlfriend who was actually very understanding about what I was going through. But my parents and my brother were very angry at me. They told me over and over how disappointed they were with me. And I took to walking in the woods more and more. I couldn't believe I was really back in those woods, any more than I could really believe I was back with my family. But the farce didn't take it so very personally that I was having such a hard time adjusting. One time I wandered over to this church that some of my family still walk to up on a hill in the woods. I'm not going to tell you where, so please don't ask. It's a place where my family is buried, and I might eventually be as well, and it's too private to share. I found it emotionally overwhelming walking up to that church. Still, I was in this paranoid Truman's World state of mind. and I inspected the tombstones to see if this was the real place, or if I was captured by the enemy, and they were making me walk through a virtual reality simulation. It turned out that I remembered some of the tombstone family names and inscriptions, but not all of them. This felt inconclusive to me, since maybe it was the program they had me inside of, which was remembering the tombstone names wrong. Who could tell? So as I was wandering between the graves, trying to remember what reality itself was, I accidentally disturbed this hairy weirdo who seemed to be digging up a freshly buried grave. My first instinct was to stop him from what he was doing, but my overwhelming sadness overruled that. I was too busy feeling sorry and confused to want to play do-gooder on that evening. It didn't matter though. The hairy weirdo saw me seeing him. He literally screamed in the air, in this way that reminded me of how my childhood dog would howl when he was alarmed. I say howl, but I don't necessarily mean that he was calling other canines to him. It was almost sort of a dog scream. It would happen when something made a loud noise nearby, that sort of thing, when he got startled. So I figured I must have startled this weirdo. And I put my hands up, palms toward him, started saying I had no beef with you guy. I tried to sort of start walking away from him sideways, while still keeping my eyes on him. But then I saw that he did not care about what I had to say at all. This was a big guy on two legs, to be sure. And he was running toward me, with an angry look on his face. That was true as well. The thing is, he did not have a human head up on his broad muscular shoulders. He had a big round head, like a mix between a black bear and a black-furred Akita dog. This was no weirdo hippie. This was a man-sized monster, and it was growling at me and running toward me on two strong muscular legs. I turned and ran. I never felt this kind of fear overseas. It was like I forgot all my training. When I ran from that big dogman, I was a little kid running from the boogeyman. I did not react well in the face of danger. But I tell you what, in that moment I stopped caring if this was real or a game. I only knew that I wanted to survive. And as scared and pathetic as I was acting, at least I was dragged back into the land of the living by the shock of this. I had no choice but to be present in the moment, and every bit of me was focused on getting back home. Well, the parts of me that weren't whimpering like a baby at least. I think the creature pulled back a bit when I got within range of the back door of my family's home, because I got inside easily and I locked up behind me. That's not to say that the creature hid itself from my family, because it did not. My father and older brother both got the artillery out when the thing stood in our backyard, yelling werewolf curse words at me from the sound of it. It seemed to know what those boomsticks were that they were holding, because it retreated before either one of them could line up a shot. That doesn't mean it went away, though. Somehow this situation brought our family together, and all the bickering was put aside. As night fell into darkness, it also became unnaturally quiet outside. I couldn't even hear all the crickets out there as usual. What kind of animal even scares little insects that are hiding away in the first place? Well, this werewolf-looking thing. That's what kind of animal. Once in a while through the night, our house would get hit by some small rock or acorn or something. We never saw them, but we could hear them. In fact, so far none of us have ever seen the Dogman or Wolfman again. But he will wake us up in the night by throwing things at our house, or even throwing things at the windows of our rooms while we sleep. He just doesn't like our family, and we take a number of extra security measures ever since. Maybe that's why we've never seen him again so far. One of my older brother's friends from his army days is a ghost hunter now. He came over for dinner one night and he heard something hitting the house at the wall behind them. We all got up and looked out the window. When we couldn't see anything out of the ordinary out there, we all said it was the werewolf hiding in the woods throwing pebbles at us. My brother's ghost hunter friend, though, He said he thought it was an apportation. You see, in some hauntings, he said, things can get teleported or apported. Like a penny can drop out of the ceiling of a room, and it's usually hot to the touch if you grab it soon enough. So this guy told us that if we are ever able to see one of those things that we hear being thrown at us, we should try to touch the object as soon as possible. If it's very hot to the touch, then maybe it was not thrown. Maybe it was a teleportation or apportation. Now, I don't understand any of that, but I thought I should include what he said and let you listeners decide if it's relevant information or not. I'm kind of hoping that writing this up for you means it's finally over. If any of us have any future problems with this thing though, don't be too surprised if you find a part 2 in your email. Story number 2. The snow was drifting upward when I saw the werewolf creature. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I saw a dogman or werewolf one time, and it felt like something more was happening than just the sighting of a rare animal. In fact, the entire area seemed to be experiencing some sort of strange atmospheric disturbance of some kind. This happened on a day in December that was not warm, but it should have been too warm for us to experience snowfall. Nevertheless, when that werewolf thing was in our view, we watched it snow in almost 50-degree weather, and we saw the snow fall for a while, then rise back upward, as if an updraft of wind were coming out of the earth itself. Let me explain this all in context. My friend had dared me to walk through the cemetery behind the old church in our woods one night. I kept telling him to pound sand until he bet me $50 that I was too chicken to do it. Not for $50, I wasn't. This church looks kinda haunted and abandoned, especially in the dark, but it isn't. They still have Sunday church services there. In fact, it's 2 different congregations that both take turns. But I guess neither congregation can afford to give the place a new coat of paint or whatever, so it really does look spooky sitting out there in the woods, with a graveyard behind it and all of that. So me, my friend who had dared me, and both our girlfriends made our way out into the woods in the middle of the night, so I could win that $50 and then take us all out for a little bit of partying. When we got to the place, both girls complained that it was colder there than anywhere else. The other 3 of them did seem pretty scared, and they asked me to call it off. I said no way, $50 is $50. So I walked into that cemetery in the dark behind the creepy old church, and I saw snow in the air all around me. I never really noticed it falling, but I saw it being held aloft and floating back upward by updrafts of air that I couldn't feel myself. I did feel around in the air, but it all felt static and cold to me. How was the snow floating upward? I felt very confused about everything that was happening. And then I noticed that dogman, that werewolf, whatever it was. The 2 of us locked eyes, and at this point my memory of what happened is different from my 3 friends. In my memory, the dogman told me a story in my mind. He made me feel like I was both watching a movie and hearing a history at the same time. I heard the epic tale of a race of people from the stars who came to this planet and helped to create the human race. He called me grandson. No, he called all of us his grandsons. All people, all humans. The other 3 say that the creature ran off as soon as we saw it. When I stood there in place frozen, they all came into the cemetery and they tried to snap me out of it. Now, I don't remember any of that. I remember receiving the communication about the history, and I was told to tell my friends that we will soon have to make a place at the table for grandfather. They agree about that part. They say I was babbling about how this is grandfather's place, and soon grandfather will take it back from us. In my head, I feel as though I should be terrified of what was told to me by that creature. It doesn't matter though. I feel incredibly blessed to have been chosen by him to deliver his message. I hope that if he ever needs assistance from another human, that he remembers to call on me. Story number 3. We live near an evil church. Dear Scary Stories NYC. The older kids in my town told me that our church was really secretly run by a bunch of bad people. Let's just say they don't actually worship who and what they say they worship. And if you let them bury you in that cemetery behind our church, well, the older kids say that your remains will get eaten up by a real werewolf that comes out at night over there. I was pretty sure this was all stuff they made up to scare us because we're younger than they are. But then me and my girlfriend saw a real werewolf out in front of that church the other night. And I'm starting to wonder how much of the rest of this might also be true. Maybe it's all true. What happened was that we got this dumb idea in our head that we could cut through those woods where the old church and graveyard are located and get back to my house from her house quicker. Honestly, we were hoping we could also use it as a place to go hang out in private, away from the eyes of the world. We could have just looked at Google Maps to see that it was a longer route home than the normal way. I don't think that would have stopped us from checking it out though. If you've ever been in love, then you remember that feeling like the world is magical and everything is meant to be, right? We were blissed out, and the forest seemed enchanted to us, like we were in a Disney movie from 100 years ago or something. But yeah, as we got closer to the church, my girlfriend motioned for me to shut up, so I did. When I looked where she was looking, I saw a werewolf standing right there. Or a dogman, or whatever you'd want to say. I mean, it didn't have its species around its wrist written in Latin or whatever. And I don't really know if it was a man dog or a lady dog, since it wasn't clearly presenting in either way, as far as my extremely limited knowledge of werewolf gender would go. But the facts of the matter that nobody can dispute would be that it was taller than I am, and I'm 5'11". It was entirely covered in darker black dog fur. It had a big round dog head and a relatively short dog snout. It had dog ears that stood up on top, and most importantly of all, it was staring directly back at me and my girlfriend. My girlfriend told me quietly to hold still and to look at her instead of the monster. Well, I held still, but I couldn't take my eyes off that thing. It began to growl and took a step toward us. I was hyperventilating. My girlfriend sounded angry and told me to look at her and not the monster. I saw the werewolf dogman getting angrier and angrier, and I couldn't look away. And then I heard my girlfriend opening her jacket and pulling her top up. I tore my eyes away from the dogman, and sure enough, she had pulled her top up right there in those cold dark woods behind the church graveyard. And before I could even drink them in, I saw those remarkable assets in her portfolio get covered over again, and I saw my girlfriend running toward my home. This woke me up and I followed her. Fortunately, the dogman didn't, as far as we know anyway. Follow us home, I mean. So we still don't know if it's true that the church between our homes is really secretly run by demon worshippers, but we do know that it's true that some kind of upright werewolf dogman animal does stalk that churchyard at night. I'm recording shows and everything's swelly because Godzilla Tim bought food for my belly. Please join me in thanking today's executive producer Godzilla Tim in Ireland. He sent us a big donation for food, and it got spent in its entirety at Trader Joe's, because that's the most affordable food store in the city right now. Basically, when you donate to us, you're donating money to Trader Joe's and food to me, because that's the state of things in 2023, as everybody knows. Godzilla Tim knows this, and he's the main reason I even got this show done today. He's also partially responsible for the secret members-only episodes that he gets to see. you can see them too, including the all-new werewolf creature in the church basement, which was gonna be part 4 of this very episode until I realized how bloody it is. Better to save that for a secret, uncensored episode only viewable by cool people like the great Godzilla Tim. If you would like to find out how to join Tim's club, then listen to what our international TV spokesmongrel Henry Lee Dogman has to say. Hank?
Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.